Greg, would you like to lead us in the flag salute?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I hope my voice holds out, folks. If you'd remain standing for a moment of silence for the brave men and women in the armed services, police, EMS, that protect this great nation. And I would like to drift a little bit tonight and say that East Goshen Township and its residents stand with the families of the lost due to terrorism locally and abroad. And let's hope that it comes to an end. Thank you.
I'd like to announce that the meeting is being live streamed. On the chairman's report, the board met in executive session for a personnel matter prior to tonight's meeting. 2, Karen Batavio has resigned as tax collector. And next comes Ginny Newland.
Excuse me, Madam Chairman, can there be an explanation as to why?
Certainly.
When my wife offered to take the position just to help the township out, and we evidently had a solicitor check to make sure that it was okay because she is judge of elections in a precinct. We found out, or she found out through voter services, that she can't do it. So she had already obligated to do judge of elections, so she has to resign from the position.
Thank
Just so
you.
it's known.
I have known Ginny for a long time. When I was on planning commission, she would be in the audience advocating for the township and for the environment, constantly pushing us to make good decisions. She was a very active member of our conservancy board and most recently East Goshen's first poet laureate. Ginny is now moving to Maryland, and we will miss her wise counsel, and we'll miss Ginny.
And her tree cutting.
Yeah.
I'm worried about the rabbits.
The board wants you to know how much she's appreciated and to wish her much happiness in the future. So we have a resolution, number 2019-98, declaring March 27th, 2019, Ginny Newland Day in East Goshen Township.
That's awfully hard on you. I'm very
No, let me read the resolution. Whereas Virginia Newland, Ginny, has been a resident of East Goshen Township, the township, since before we started keeping records. Whereas, over many decades on the Conservancy Board, Ginny poured her blood, sweat, and tears into preserving the township's natural environment and ensuring that the township's flora and fauna remain protected for generations to come. Whereas, in 2014, Ginny became the township's first poet laureate, entertaining township residents with her taught and occasionally bawdy verse in the township's quarterly newsletter and hosting various poetry readings at the township park. Whereas, Ginny is a feisty woman who punches well above her weight. Whereas, everyone who has had the occasion to meet Ginny has walked away feeling better about themselves and the world around them. Whereas, Ginny's relentless can-do attitude and positive outlook on life should be the model for how all of humanity should live their lives. Be it resolved that Wednesday, March 27th, 2019, shall hereby be proclaimed Ginny Newland Day in East Goshen Township. Resolved and adopted this 19th day of March 2019. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in,
Everybody's saving the discussion for the second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, Ginny.
Tell everyone, the voting was comes from John. He was my editor. Well, he was. And Janet is absolutely right. I came to her meetings first of all, and she was the most perfect control of those meetings. And the men would come and they would crawl up and Janet would straighten them out.
Oh, I'm gonna miss you.
And I started really with Marty.
Yes, it did. We go back together.
Yeah. I remember, I learned a whole lot. Thank you all for being here.
And we'll see you on the 27th. You're not going yet.
And
You're not
90
going
years
to
from
that
now,
state
we're going
yet.
to celebrate it again.
That's right.
You think I'll live that
I
long?
think.
We
you will.
For
think so.
sure.
We
I think you were
so.
put on this earth to make it miserable for us.
Ah.
I was so nice to you.
Jenny, we love you. We love you.
Thank you so much.
We'll see you next
Thank
week,
you.
Thank
Jenny.
you, everybody, for supporting this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll do that.
And you, everybody, thank you.
Are you gonna sit through one more meeting? You're not captive here. You can take all your friends out to have dinner. If you'd like. Okay, moving on.
Moving on, we have our staff reports.
Public comment, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. All right, is there any public comment for items not on the agenda? Come up, please, at the microphone and identify yourself. Microphone.
Is it on? Let me make sure it's on. Just these goods. And you have to get very close to it.
I just have a
Give your name and address, please.
Terry Relic, 12 Tremont Drive, Malvern, PA. I just have something a statement to read from the neighbors regarding the Malvern Institute and how it was handled. I just would like to comment on that. Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
And I wrote it, so I won't
That's fine.
screw up. All right. I'm here tonight to state my disappointment in how the entire process was handled by the township regarding the Malvern Institute's application, from the Planning Commission to the Zoning Hearing Board. Each board bent over backwards to accommodate any and all requests by the Malvern Institute, with no regard of how it affected the neighbors. From the many last-minute cancellations to the never-ending Zoning Hearing Board meetings, no one at any time said enough. During this process, a few of the neighbors were told by more than one board member that the application was a done deal. This made all the neighbors suspicious over the relationship between the Malvern Institute and the township. This application should have never reached the Zoning Hearing Board. They had no case and everybody knew it. The neighbors sat patiently while the attorney for the Malvern Institute went on and on about everything but proving his case. This whole process lasted over 2 years and cost our neighborhood thousands of dollars in legal fees. The neighbors begged you not to support this application, but we were told by Kristen Camp that the board could not vote to oppose the application and impose conditions, although we found out later that there is no township regulation stating this. On the contrary, in the minutes of the Planning Commission dated November 1st, 17, it states, quote, Mark Gordon reviewed some of the township solicitor's comments, especially no matter what position the Planning Commission takes, yes, no, or no position, conditions should be added for the zoning hearing board to see. Is there a different set of rules for the Planning Commission? We also know that most of the 28 conditions were meaningless. The Malvern Institute would have had to self-police themselves. Also, the 80-bed limit was a hollow promise. Page 16 of the zoning hearing board decision confirms this. It states, quote, absent some further relief by the township and an 8-foot-high industrial turnpike sound fence was okay with all of you. That was a disgrace. At the last zoning hearing board meeting, when the decision was read, John Snyder all but begged Brian Nagel to not appeal the decision, but to submit a smaller application. We feel that advice should never have been stated and are very disappointed. The Malvern Institute is only expanding to increase profits, not for some greater good to the community. There is an enormous drug crisis in this country, but it's not a reason to placate a business trying to profit off of it. I walked through the facility with the zoning hearing board members. I would have been embarrassed asking for an increase in size when it is obvious not a dime has been spent in years improving the space that they have now. The Malvern Institute has crammed 80 patients into a facility that should house much less, then come complaining to the township that they have no space for staff. It should not have been on the neighbors to suffer for the bad business decisions made by the Malvern Institute. So since John Snyder left the door wide open for the Malvern Institute to submit another plan, I want to make it crystal clear that the neighbors are prepared to fight any new expansion plans by the Malvern Institute. We will retain Mark Thompson again, but this time we expect the township to have our backs. We will also be a lot smarter, and we will not tolerate the delay tactics and stunts pulled the last time by the Malvern Institute. The Malvern Institute will have an uphill battle trying to prove their case with all the recorded testimony from the zoning hearing board meetings. We will not again sit quietly and let the Malvern Institute run the show. We will hold them accountable for all past statements and correct the claims that simply were not accurate. Thank you for giving me this time to air the neighbors' grievances. It was a long and stressful 2 years, and we hope we do not have to live through it again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else? Okay, we'll move on to emergency services reports. WeGo, Officer Wassel, Chief Bernard is away.
Good evening, thank you. So just a few items for tonight. We've had some recent thefts in the past month from packages from Goshen Valley. It was just a recent string of about 3 or 4 that we've been dealing with. We just want to remind residents that there's steps that they can take to protect those packages being delivered. They may want to sign up for alerts or delivery alerts. They also may want to consider listing a neighbor to maybe look out for the packages on their behalf if they're unavailable and nobody's home to receive them. Also consider if they're available or this is possible, they could have them delivered to their workplace if their workplace allows such type of deliveries to be made. And again, we also, hey, nowadays there's a lot of security cameras that are pretty cheap and being offered out there. It's not a bad idea, and to at least look at and consider. A couple other things I have was Ready Chesco. There's been a big push for the Ready Chesco website and signing up for emergency alerts. We are currently going out and handing out cards to residents here. This is just one of the cards. So as we go out on calls, we're handing these out to the residents, making sure they're aware of Ready Chesco. It's easy. You can go online directly to their website. It's readychesco.org, and you can sign up for those alerts. They come through email, text messages, whatever you choose. whatever form you choose to receive them. The other thing I want to go over is that, reminder to everybody, we have medication drop box at our station down at 1041 Wilmington Pike. You can bring in your unused or expired prescription medication, drop them off. There's things we do accept, mostly pills. We just ask that people not bring any sharps or needles and look into dropping them off at a healthcare facility, as we don't want to collect those or any type of liquids. But we do collect all the prescription pills, ointments, and we can take them as long as they're bagged up and not loose. And that's about it. That's all I have for you this evening, and thank you very much.
I have a comment.
Yes, absolutely.
We had a breakfast last week for some local businesses, and the topic of Ready Chesco came out, and several people mentioned that they would be happy to put a poster in their windows. So that might be something to consider.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure we can get them through the county and probably get some nice pamphlets and brochures also for them to be able to provide to their employees.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I also had a conversation with Edmund Falls and Hersheyville Villages, and they've attempted to go out to the villages repeatedly, and they're willing to do that again. And I think also approaching neighborhood associations to put it in our various neighborhood association newsletters would be a really good idea. So that's just.
Well, thankfully, like I said, when we're going out on calls, we're hitting all the neighborhoods, of course, during the course of the day. And we're trying to give these out and get them out. So hopefully the word will spread and get out amongst the neighborhood groups.
Yeah, it's a good campaign.
Great. Yeah, it is. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Very easy to sign up for, so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
I'll just make a comment based on Ready Chesco. Just, I recently read, thank you, Rick, for sending it, one of the emergency services for the pipeline, written by Sunoco for a Canadian pipeline. And it's very clear in that document that communications during an emergency is square in the lap of the county and municipal governments. So this Ready Chesco initiative is the best thing we have right now, in addition to reverse 911 to notify people of conditions regarding the pipeline situation. These pipelines coming through right now are, particularly the NGLs, are new to our township, and we need to be really diligent and vigilant about getting the Ready Chesco information out to our residents so that they'll know what to do in the event we have an emergency. So, important stuff.
Yep, very good.
Madam Chairman, I'll start with the fire company statistics. Goshen Fire Company monthly operations for February 2019, the East Goshen only. Fire responses were 12. Fire police responses, 12. EMS, which is emergency services, 193. Good Fellowship Club had 65 calls in East Goshen Township, 14.3% of their volume. And Malvern Fire Company had February statistics for their ambulance of 6 BLS, which is basic life support, and all 6 of those ended up being transports. 30 ALS, which is advanced life support, and of those 18 were transports. We have the full guides online if anybody would like it. If it's okay, I'll go over to the fire marshal now.
Yes, please.
Had an incident, Bellingham, that actually mushroomed into 2 incidents. March 10th, we had an elevator fire in the Brookmont building that put one of the elevators out of service and created a lot of smoking conditions that involved a little bit of relocation of patients. On the 18th, we had a second elevator malfunction. Of the 2 elevators in the building, now both of them are out, and the emergency parts had not come in for number 1. So this office declared to Bellingham that all residents on the 2nd and 3rd floor had to be moved until working elevators were reestablished, which they did. Both were repaired as of today, I understand, and we do not do inspections of elevators. That's done by Labor and Industry. So they were advised to contact labor and industry, and we will be waiting a final report. This office also did recommend to staff at Bellingham, since the buildings are the same age and the elevators are used the same, it's highly advantageous to check all of the elevators for the parts that went bad. They're the same manufacturer and roughly the same installation. Other than that, everything is back to normal as of this afternoon. The fire company, obviously, with their staff, fire police and everybody had a great response, and there was no loss of life, very minimal damage. That would be a little bit of smoke damage, possibly a couple $1,000 damage to the first elevator. Fire was deemed electrical, which it was denied by our codes inspector. So I contacted the township, or the county fire marshal, met him back out there. And here what we believe had happened is these LED bulbs that they're putting in have to have the right ballast. Well, to save money, they put the LED bulb in and keep the fluorescent ballast. What happens evidently is it overheats the bulb breaks, the LED filament is able to drop down, droop, landed on the egg crate, started the fire, created the damage. So it basically is an electrical fault, electrical hazard, but it was caused by an inappropriate ballast with an LED fixture. That's enough.
Thank you. John?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chairman. As of the end of February, we had a year-to-date deficit of about $11,000, but a positive budget variance of about $26,000. Really nothing out of the ordinary at this time of year. February was a good month for earned income tax, so that is now over budget. I think it's falling again in March, but it's bouncing around right where it needs to be. And interestingly, snow removal. I sort of look back on the winter of 2019 as pretty intense, but we're like $70,000 or $80,000 under for snow, so we got some savings there. Administration is over budget, and that's really largely due to timing issues. Nothing jumped out at me as breaking the bank. Among other funds, really nothing out of the ordinary to report. Sewer is doing fine. We have a positive, we have a healthy surplus, year-to-date surplus right now. Obviously that'll even out as the year goes on, but I would bring your attention, as we talked about last time, March 9th, April 9th, second meeting, Tuesday in April, we'll have a special meeting, among other things, to talk about 2018 sewer rates, which we'll have a recommendation for you then by. And last but not least, in the memo, I suggested we have the long-range planning budget session on Wednesday, May 22nd at 10 a.m. Does that work for everybody? 10 a.m. Wednesday?
Looks good here.
We have a police meeting that would be at 4 o'clock. That should be fine.
Okay, sounds good.
I can only tell you from experience, those of us that work the whole day, you're right. For those of us that work the whole day, I can tell you that the next day after the election is a little bit tough.
No, I know it's hard to work 2 days in a row. I have some experience with that.
I'm just saying, and some of us don't have to do that, John, but that particular day is long and longer. And I understand you can fight through this, but.
Well, we could do it. There's no law prohibiting us from doing it on, say, the same Wednesday or a week later, like the 29th at 10 o'clock.
We could do it on Saturday.
No, we could do it on.
My days are all long. I mean, what's the difference? Every day's Saturday for you. I mean,
no, seriously, Marty, it's fine. If you want to do it on 29th.
I'm just saying, if it's possible, it would probably be a good idea.
Is that okay, the 29th?
Now we're at the 29th. May 29th. I'm not sure I can do the 29th. I work that day, I think.
Oh, is that the one day a week you do work?
I hope myself up there. May 29th, that's also Wednesday, right?
I have a very busy schedule, but I should be able to make it.
29th, 10 a.m. All right,
29th.
thank you.
All right. Are there any questions for John?
Yeah.
Any questions from the floor? Okay, we will move on to the minutes. We have the draft minutes for the meeting on Tuesday, March 5th.
Yes, no comment.
All right, is there a motion to approve?
Sure, I'll make the motion.
And a second? Any comments from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Minutes are approved as corrected. Now we come to our hearing. I'm sorry, treasurer's report.
Okay, Madam Chair, if you want me to take it?
Yes, please.
Everybody have a chance to review March 1st through March 14th in our packets? I did as always. And does anybody have any questions? With no questions, I would like to make a motion that we graciously accept the receipts and pay the bills as proposed once voted on.
I'll second.
Any comments? Comments from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's passed. Now we get to our hearing. I'll hand it over to Ryan.
Thank you very much. Let's open the record for this evening's public hearing. This evening, we will conduct a public hearing as part of the regularly scheduled public meeting to consider the adoption of amendment to certain provisions of the pension plan for the Goshen Fire Company. First, the title and summary of the proposed ordinance amendment is as follows. An ordinance amending certain provisions of the pension plan for the Goshen Fire Company, which was established by the Board of Supervisors of East Goshen Township on May 5th, 1987, by ordinance number 78. By way of ordinance amendment, introduction, and background, prior ordinance amendments of this type have been enacted by the board back in 1989, 2009, and 2011. This amendment is necessary in light of the March 12th, 2019 collective bargaining agreement, which was reached between the Goshen Fire Company and the Goshen Professional Firefighters Association. The agreement will govern the next 4 years. If there are specific questions regarding the changes to the agreement, Mr. Altschul is here and able to address them. While the township is not a party to the collective bargaining agreement, the township is the sponsor of the firefighters' pension plan, which was authorized by township ordinance again in 1987. As such, in order for the Goshen Fire Company to execute the new agreement, the township must enact this ordinance. By way of hearing exhibits, I'd like to introduce and admit the following 5 exhibits. Exhibit B1, proof of publication in the Daily Local News on March 6th, 2019. Exhibit B2, a letter dated March 5th, 2019 to the Daily Local News, providing the proposed ordinance amendment for public inspection. Exhibit B3, a letter dated March 5th, 2019 to the Chester County Law Library, providing the proposed ordinance amendment for public inspection. Exhibit B4, a memorandum dated today, March 19th, 2019, from Assistant Township Manager and Finance Director John Altschul to the Township Board of Supervisors. And lastly, Exhibit B8, a memorandum of agreement dated March 12, 2019, between the Goshen Fire Company and the Goshen Professional Firefighters Association, IAFF, Local 4752. At this time, I'd ask if there are any questions or comments from the Board of Supervisors.
I have a question. As a plan sponsor, are we also the plan fiduciary?
Yes, we are. We have fiduciary insurance for that, so it falls under the purview of the pension committee.
there any other questions or comments from the board? Hearing no others, are there any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, I'd respectfully request that the board entertain a motion for the adoption of the proposed ordinance amendment.
Madam Chairman, I move that we adopt the ordinance amending certain provisions of the pension plan for the Goshen Fire Company.
Is there a second?
Sure.
Marty seconded. Any comments? Comments from the floor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It's carried.
That concludes tonight's hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan.
You did a wonderful job.
Thanks, Gary.
Thank you.
Okay, as we move on, there is no old business, so we'll move to new business. First, a recommendation on the Marydell Pond landscaping.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I first of all want to acknowledge Jim Williams, right there. He was the chair of the Marydell Pond Committee. We've been meeting, or they've been meeting basically for the last 12 months, one way or another, to develop a landscaping plan. I thought to back up to get you to where we are today, over that period of time, the group of residents, I think there was 11 all total, probably about 8 of them would consistently come to meetings, and worked with Nate Klein, our engineer, to develop a landscaping plan for what that pond will look like after the dredging is complete and all of the spoils have dried out. I think it's a really exciting plan. It emphasizes native grasses, plants, the shrubs, trees, those kind of things, critically while maintaining the viewscape from Barker Drive of Marydell Pond. I think Marydell Pond, of the 6 township-owned ponds, really is the kind of crown jewel, and I think it's great that we're going first. I think we're learning a lot about the process, both from the dredging and the permitting. But I thought this exercise with the landscaping that affects sort of joint interests of both the township as well as the surrounding property owners was a really positive experience. So the emphasis really is on slowing the rate of groundwater coming from Barker Drive down to the pond. And separately, we'll be installing 4 bays. That's more of a public works thing. It wasn't really something the pond committee sort of discussed too much. But the idea is to recreate the natural environment with those native plantings, create a meadow grass right around the pond, slows the groundwater from coming in, slows the sediment from getting into the pond to ensure that that pond can continue to be a viable body of water and recreational area for generations to come. I would add that some of the details of the plan will come into focus once we're actually ready to plan. And we're going to be working with Jim and some of the other members of the committee to state where this tree will go here and that shrub will go here. But the PowerPoint presentations included in your agenda, as well as the conceptual rendering, I think provide a pretty good outline of what we're sort of talking about here. But as I said, a lot more coordination left to go. The total estimated cost of all of the materials is about $40,000. That will bring the 2019 budget of that pond rehabilitation budget will be right in line with what we budgeted, what our actual expenditures are. Fortunately, Mark Miller has a bunch of boulders down at West Town Way, so we can basically don't have to spend that much money on boulders. It's going to look really nice. Jim, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Please
Yeah.
come up and use.
Well, Jim's coming up. Jim, I want to thank you for your leadership on the committee. Come a long way in a year. You've had great input with the staff resources with John and Mark Miller, Rick at the helm. It's been a really productive, very productive process to date. As John said, we have a long way to go, but I just wanted to shout out to you and thank you for your active participation, great insights, thoughts, and again, your leadership on the committee.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm Jim Williams. I'm at 1524 High Meadow Lane, which is near the pond, but not right on it. And I just wanted to mention that we've also had a lot of good input from the Conservancy Board, the people who've been involved with trying to keep the town green for quite a while. And so, as John mentioned, we're gonna chip in and show up when we're looking at, where we're gonna plant things. But in your drawings that you have there, I think the one drawing I like the most is the one that shows kind of a straight line across, and it'll show that the recommendation for the landscape actually includes native water plants that will be planted in the water, on the edge of the water, and then right down to the meadow area itself. The fact that these are all the kind of plants that are already kind of native to our area really will make that pond so much more natural and likely to support some small fish and other creatures that kind of have inhabited that area over time. So we're really excited about it, and I think as John mentioned, the way it's actually gonna look from Barker Drive is probably the thing that will be the most appreciated by everybody in the neighborhood, not just people who live near it. So again, I wanna say thanks to everybody for the opportunity really to participate.
Thank you, Jim. We really appreciate input from our residents. I know that makes a big difference. As an original Marydale person, I watched the pond go from pleasant to not so pleasant, and I think this is a great project, and I'm happy to see it's working so well.
And there's a lot of people in the development that have volunteered to be on the committee, which has been kind of nice as well. It's been a kind of a community building activity just to work on. So,
Jim, I was gonna mention that, I know a lot of people in there, and there's a lot of compliments coming from your groups, educating the other residents as far as stormwater control. What they have is what you get down here. So I think for the most part, it's been very positive, Jim. So thank you for really positive leadership for you and the group.
well, thank you.
And John and everybody else that does it, but yeah, great job.
John's done a lot of the heavy lifting.
A lot of good input.
Thanks. Thank you, Jim.
So formally, there is a motion, recommended motion to approve the landscaping plan at an estimated cost of.
Madam Chairman, I move that we adopt the proposed landscaping plan for Marydale Pond at a cost of approximately $40,274.
I'll second that motion.
Any more comments from the table? Comments from the audience? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. We'll move now to a resolution endorsing Landscapes 3. Landscapes 3 is Chester County's new comprehensive plan. It's intended to encourage a consistent approach across the county for addressing growth and preservation. And the county has asked all Chester County municipalities to endorse it.
I encourage the board to do that. I sit on the board of the planning commission. For those that don't know, it's been about a 2-year effort to get to this point. In Landscapes 2, there was unanimity in the 73 municipalities, all signed on to it. I would hope that we would too. I can tell you that fundamentally, I think Janet mentioned this, this is a balance between growth and preservation. The growth part is to continue to be in the areas that have the infrastructure in place, and the preservation area is the other areas. The original goal was about 29% of the county as open space. I know now, because of things that have happened in the meantime, that they're now looking at a higher number than that, although I don't think they've quite decided on that because the commissioners come into play. So in Chester County, you will have at least 30% of the county preserved in some form, which I know makes Ginny very happy. I think the good part about it is that you contain the growth part of this to the areas that now can support it. And you don't have to go putting a lot of infrastructure in and destroying the whole beauty of what's to be preserved. So it's quite a plan. Brian O'Leary, who's the director, has put a ton of time in, as have several of the members of the planning commission. So this is quite a big deal, and I certainly hope the board would support it.
Would you give me a motion?
I would make a motion that we support and adopt Landscapes Plans 3 as requested by the Chester County Planning Commission.
Second.
Any comments from the table?
Yes, I want to echo Marty, of course, who serves on the Chester County Planning Commission. Comments, the plan is very well prepared. The process was very effective with participation and outreach to the citizenry. The advisory board, the advisory task force was very well constructed. They are trying to balance growth with preservation, and it's going to be a tough one. If you don't get a chance to do anything, at least go online and read the executive summary. Between the projection at this point in time, between 2015 and 2045, is another 146,000 Chester County residents. We're already at 500,000. So when we talk about or kibitz about traffic congestion and some of the other elements that are associated with development and density, it's great to focus on the already developed areas, but the reality is if it can't be preserved, there are going to be areas that are going to be developed that are Cray-Billy Farms and Jerakian Estates. So there are lots of challenges ahead for Chester County. Most of us will not be around in 2045, but when you think of where we are now, and the hot spots that we see, whether it's development or congestion, putting 146,000 more residents, that will add to it. That also translates to maybe 70,000 new homes, maybe 50 or 60,000 new jobs, employment, lots of opportunities, but with it comes challenges, and I think they've outlined that in this plan. It's worth reading, if nothing else, the executive summary. It's well done.
There's one thing that, and I apologize because my microphone doesn't seem to want to cooperate. There's one thing that came up out of this that's kind of interesting, because in many ways, Chester County is blessed with this, that, and the other thing in terms of income levels, in terms of wealth, in terms of education. However, there's a problem now and will be on the horizon. There's about 9,000 jobs that are waiting for people to take them. There's about 22,000 people that are looking for employment. Unfortunately, the 22,000 people that are looking for employment aren't qualified for the 9,000 jobs that are available. And as a consequence, there's a large workforce problem now that's being generated in the county that has to be resolved, or the county is going to become stagnant. And it's not going to continue to have all the dynamic businesses that it has in the county now. So there has been a workforce group established that are high-powered people. I believe it's being chaired by the Economic Development Council. It is a concern for everybody. It should be concerned about what's going on in the county, because as good as the county is, you have to have some degree of growth to provide the revenue in order to support the services as well as to supply employment. What they're planning to do now, which is really a big deal, is they're working with the educational environment to start at the 7th grade level, to start saying to kids that, by the way, there's other things that you can do besides go to college. There's trade, there's other kind of things. many of which are very lucrative in terms of the salaries. Unfortunately, that's the part of, well, there's two parts. There's two parts of this dilemma. One is the educational level that's required for certain jobs. The other is the education and skill level that's required for some of these jobs that require computerized lathes and that kind of stuff. They used to measure the success of the school districts by how many kids went to college in the graduating class. They now are moving away from that and are now going to begin to look at how many that were in a graduating class over some period of time are employed in one form or the other. It's not all college educated people. This is a big deal and there's much more to follow on it, but everybody should be aware that there is a mismatch between job availability and the ability of the people to provide the skills that they need. Ginny?
I know you all know about Williamson Trade School.
Could you go to the,
Can you use the mic?
Wait a minute, you stay there, dear. You stay there. No. Go sit down.
The traveling mic.
Thank you.
Watch me strangle.
You all know about Williamson Trade School, and you all know, I suppose, that all those grads are snapped up immediately, and they have wonderful jobs. And if you could persuade the school systems to put money into that type of trade schools, or to, if we have some now, to encourage their expansion, it would make a wonderful,
Hold that close to you, Ginny.
oh, sorry, it would be wonderful to help along the employment of those kids.
Ginny, I was talking to a school district representative. They are finally now moving in that direction because they realize, I have to be careful saying this, college is not everything
No.
for everybody. There is a place, and a very important place, but they are getting more and more invested into the trades with trade councils and so forth. So it's finally happening.
And they have to give those kids pride in themselves and in their abilities, so they feel just as worthy as a college kid.
That
My-
is very important, that is very well said, Jim.
my son went to the VOTech and got employed. He then went to Pentech, which is another VOTech, and he got employed as soon as he graduated and has never been out of work
Yeah.
since. So
And it probably makes a lot more money too.
You push it to turn it off, and you
Thank
push
you.
it to turn it on, and you push it to turn it off.
But we have, to follow up with Ginny, we've heard many quotes from many of the industry leaders, some of our current, our Google CEOs and others, that skills are going to become more valuable than college degrees in many areas. And Ginny made a great point that, and I know myself, I felt it. When I first started college, I didn't know what I was interested to do, to do in college. I left for a year after a couple of years, and what haunted me was that everybody else in my family was highly educated. And I was not gonna be the person that I could be if I didn't have some sheepskins. And we've got to get over that. It's a very important cultural barrier that respecting skill sets rather than what you have diplomas on the wall. I don't want to discount that, but it's so important to respect the value of skills rather than accomplishments with sheepskins.
And the
Yeah.
quality of the person.
Well, no
too.
doubt.
No doubt, Jim.
have another comment.
Yeah, just one other comment. This is
Give your-
Marty.
give your
Tom
name.
Yeah, Tom McDonald, 646 Thorncroft Drive. Marty, the planning commission, with these kids and these education programs, has there been any talk in the county or these municipalities on offering internships or work programs with these kids, taking them on over the summer, helping even out here in this front door?
I can address that.
I didn't comment on that, but I will tell you that there's significant effort at the county level, including through the planning commission, to do exactly that. In fact, there should be coming something else shortly, we haven't already received it, where the townships are requests to use interns in the summertime if, or other times, if in fact they have things to do that would benefit in their pursuit of whatever they're doing.
Yeah, it has to be managed,
So,
but
yes.
there's an opportunity that, you know, as you have college internships, you know, these schools that, Ginny mentioned also need.
There's a value to that in that, obviously, it's relatively inexpensive, but you also get stuff done that may not otherwise get done, so, but you have to have the right requirement.
Yeah.
And that's, the trick is matching up the requirements to the people that want the
Yeah,
internship.
it was just a thought,
Oh, it's a good one.
municipalities, the planning commission looking at being a resource
Yeah, it's a good one.
for the trade-off.
They are reaching out,
Thanks, that's all.
like they've never done before.
Well, again, it's the future.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
Good point.
I could too. Michelle Truitt, 1430 Grand Oak Lane. 20 seconds, got it. Okay, so, I think that one of the things that the planning commission has to actually discuss is the parents have to change their mindset.
Oh, yeah.
My kids go to college, that's it. That's a big problem, and a lot of it is up here for a lot of parents.
Absolutely.
It's a big problem.
Absolutely.
When our kid decided he was gonna go to trade school, people were, what a waste. Why is it a waste?
But
He's got a
Michelle,
great trade.
It's
It's
not only the
fantastic.
parents. I don't wanna belay this, but Henderson, 1970, 1969, I dropped from academic to trades.
Man,
I was told that I'm gonna be a flunky by our guidance counselor,
yes.
that I'm gonna be a failure in life if I don't go to college. And that is exactly how it was at Henderson High School. And that is the same way it is up until recently in these schools. Look, I have to tell you,
Yep.
if I had to do it over again, I hate to admit this, cause Marty will laugh, if I had a chance, I would have liked to go to college. It didn't work for me. I think it did very well, because the first thing I learned in life is respect and how to work. That's what these young adults, they're not kids, these are young adults now, these are the future leaders of our country. Half of them don't know work ethics, half of them don't know self-respect, they can't respect their parents, let alone the neighbors.
Right.
Let's start with basic civility, but look, let's not talk about this all night.
No,
The change is
you're
coming.
right. And
Yeah,
I'm
I
so
agree.
All
glad.
thanks to Marty.
Thanks, Marty.
You're welcome.
Seriously, it is something that I really think that the adults have to get their mind
I
wrapped
agree.
around.
I agree, Michelle.
My child does not have to go to college. I don't have a college degree. I have a certificate and I'm good at what I do. I'm in the top of my field and I am the one people come to. I'm proud of what I've done and I don't regret not having a degree.
As I said, my son went to Voc Tech, and then he went to Penn Tech, which isn't Penn Tech anymore, but at the time was a 2-year degree for, technical things. He did plumbing and HVAC, and he has never been out of work for his, since.
They approach this in the word, they use the word culture. You gotta change the culture, and that culture change is at the kid level, but also at the parent level. Because the parent mindset has to get away from the fact that there is certain disciplines that require a college education. There's many others that do not, or require a specific type of education, but a specific type of skill level that can be provided in the schools, but they gotta go about changing the whole way of operating. And it's going to take some time, but I can tell you, it has already started in Chester County, both with the parents and both with the kids, but it's gonna be a long process. But at the end of the day, it should help alleviate this disconnect between the jobs available and the worker qualifications that are available for the jobs. That's really what they're trying to do in the final analysis. But it's a tough road to hoe, but they have a lot of people working on it that know what they're doing, which is the good news.
Well, Well, this is national too, and it's international.
It
so
is
it's
national.
global.
Okay, I think we have a motion on the floor.
Yep.
Has it seconded?
What?
It's been
Yes,
seconded.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is passed.
Thank you for the board, appreciate it.
Send our best to the planning commission,
Yeah, this one.
appreciation of the plan itself and our support. No.
Okay,
Nobody
next,
likes me.
next on the agenda is we're acknowledging receipt of the 2018 deer management report.
There were 25 deer were harvested, it was down a little bit from last year. We've had no complaints, and they are currently soliciting applications for next year. And they'll be available for the board's meeting in June.
Next,
Hey, Greg, have a good night.
Thanks, Craig. Good to see you.
good night,
Nice to see
Greg.
you.
Keep your eye on the ball.
Welcome back.
Are we adjourned?
No, we have some more stuff to do.
Let's go.
All right, next, we're considering the recommendation for a parking restriction on School Lane.
The school lane's a narrow street in the south part of the township. We have a small park down there, but it's only like maybe 17, 18 feet wide. There was a couple new houses built. There's now some parking issues. We had some issues with the snowplow couldn't get through. Trash truck had a problem, and it's basically caused by people park on both sides of the street. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but, Mark Miller, our Director of Public Works, has tried to work with the neighbors. We've involved the police, but the recommendation would be is that we're gonna adopt an ordinance to limit parking to one side of the street only. We would need to do an ordinance to do that.
I can say that I was down that way, so I just decided to take a ride up to see how bad it really is. And it's all that was cracked up to be inside the correspondence that we got, so I would say that the recommendation is right on target.
Madam Chair, I'd like to, do we need to make a motion to
We need a
draft?
motion to advertise
draft-
it here, do it.
Okay, yeah, I'd like to make a motion to draft a resolution, an ordinance, that would provide parking on the east side of School Lane only, and to advertise that.
Second.
Any other comments?
Rick, I do have one question. Obviously, when we get to the point, there will be some signage also stating the ordinance, so there is teeth in it that we can find the people.
Yes, yeah.
That's the important thing.
And we'll send a letter to all the people that are in that
Yep.
section, so everyone knows about it.
That's it.
Yeah.
When the hearing is, everyone,
Yeah.
they'll say they didn't know that.
Excellent. The vote?
You vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is passed. Okay. Any other comments from the floor on any other matter?
Okay, Michelle Truitt again, 1430 Grandin Lane. Regarding the safe disposal of medications, I actually talked with Officer Russell after you stepped out. One of the things that's not been addressed, there are means to get rid of pills, there's no means to get rid of EpiPens. And you can't take them back to the pharmacy, they won't accept them. You can't take them to your doctor's offices because they are charged by the poundage and containers for their medical waste. So there's really not a good means of being able to safely dispose of EpiPens. I know this because we have lots of them. The fact is that I did contact a pharmacist regarding this, and I contacted a manufacturer. Officer Wassel and I are working behind the scenes with the DA's office as well to perhaps find a way to get the information out there so that you can safely dispose of them. Can I tell you how I was told to dispose of them, or should I not? Right. I'll just leave it at that.
I would suggest not at this point.
Right. So the other question I was gonna ask is, I don't know if Rick would be the person to look to for this, but is it possible to talk to somebody to talk to the, trash haulers to determine what they find is the safest way to dispose of this? And I will talk to you offline and let you know how I was told I should handle that. But it's not me. There are a lot of people out there with EpiPens or bee stings, as you know, and various other allergies.
Michelle, you certainly don't, I'm just gonna talk as one, you certainly do not need our permission. It's good to bring it up. If you wanna call Ricky and pass some information or get some information.
Okay.
As a resident.
Sure.
Anybody is welcome to do
Okay.
that. If you can pass on some information to him,
And then he
that'll
can,
be
he and I can
helpful.
work on that.
Then he can digest it.
And then is it possible the township could send out information regarding how to handle that?
As long as you pay for any of the costs.
Yeah,
As long as you're gonna eat that, then I'll pay for that.
We'll certainly do, constant contact messages and put it on the website, yeah, that's an important issue.
I was kidding. Maybe.
Okay, next we have correspondence. We have a letter dated January 9th, 2019, with approval of an environmental covenant for the Sunoco gas station at 1425 Paoli Pike. And
If you recall, there was a leak up there 8-9 years ago now. So they pumped the ground, pumped it down, removed the contaminant, got it down at the appropriate level. And then under the way state government works with these types of problems, once they get to what they consider a safe level, they then require the property owner to essentially put a covenant on the ground. And long story short, is basically the ground has to be paved to prevent additional groundwater from going down, and also that the property can't be used for residential use, it's got to remain commercial use. So, there is a covenant, and that was approved by DEP, they recorded, and, it'll be, there won't be a house built up there, that's for sure.
good. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Make the motion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Well done.
Thank you
Janet.
people for coming.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Ricky, I have some paperwork that I'd like you to shred, but I don't know how to spell it because I don't have a college degree. So. I don't know how to spell shred.
SHREK.